hearing. We're going to go ahead and get started and turn it over to Dr. Battle to begin. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Board Member Dr. Berthena Namba McKinney. We appreciate you opening this up. In just a moment, I'm going to turn it over to our Chief Financial Officer, Jorge Robles, who is going to provide a brief update around where we are with the budget process. We have a little bit of awkward timing this year from the time the mayor did conduct his state of Metro address in the filing of his ordinance to our board meeting. And so Chief Robles is going to give us an update around what we know to date and some of the complex decisions we'll have to make in bringing a draft budget back to the board. As a reminder, just to level set us with regards to this budget cycle, again, in partnership, this board with the board and with the mayor, we are excited about the investments that continue to flow our way with regards to improving outcomes for our young people here inside of the school district. But as a kind of backdrop and reminder for everyone and level setting, when this board adopted the budget priorities for the school year, we were not asking for anything new. And so, again, that will kind of surface in some of the difficult decisions that we'll have to make, particularly as we think about our continuity of operations budget, as well as the continuing strategies and priorities that were in our ESSER bridge, alongside our strategic compensation approach and our security investments. And so I just wanted to provide that kind of level setting as we move into this. And we've got some other moving parts that are out of our control with regards to some new state laws and formulas that had not been determined in our last budget and finance committee meeting. So I will turn it over to Chief Robles to walk us through this brief update as we continue to work on our proposed budget recommendation. Chief Robles.
Thank you, Dr. Battle. Can you all hear me okay? Yes. Well, good afternoon. Budget Chair Naba McKinney, Board Chair Player, and board members, Dr. Battle. I will provide an update on the FY26 budget development after the Mayor's State of the Metro address on May 1st. And as Dr. Battle shared with you just now, but also on her director's update on last Friday, we have been working really hard since May 1st to actually try to get to a proposed budget that actually takes into account the mayor's ordinance, proposed ordinance, but timeline is short, and there are really some important and difficult decisions to be made in order to make sure that we are allocating funds according to the priorities that this board has set out. So as Dr. Battle references, I'm going to provide updates on the key aspects of what's on the budget ordinance from the mayor, along with some other pieces of information. But I wanted to start reminding us on the priorities that this board set out, and this is what has guided how we have aligned the funding needs and how those have been identified, and that this will continue to guide the work now that we understand what the mayor has allocated to Metro, and to MNPS. So a lot of work is underway, recognizing and observing, using these priorities as a guidance. So one of the things that is an update from when we last met, I know that you did have a brief update on one of the Dr. Battle's director's update on this, is around TISA funding. In the last April update on the TISA funding, the capacity factor, which is used to calculate the allocation, how much the state allocates for education versus what, in this case, Davidson County allocates to education, that capacity factor increased from 18.21% to 18.67%. And all other things remaining the same, that change in the fiscal capacity factor is projected to have an impact of a $10 million approximately reduction on the funding that we would receive from the state on FY26. So that is something that, came in late April that we now need to take into account. And this is separate from all the other adjustments that are made in the TISA formula that happen after the fact, such as, how much money, how much revenue is taken from the top to distribute for vouchers or for state authorized charters. So regarding the mayor's ordinance for fiscal year 26, I saw you all there. And so we all heard what the mayor communicated. And in his proposed budget for FY26, it includes a 13% increase in revenue from MNPS to support the board-approved priorities. As Dr. Battle referenced, this is an important investment that we're grateful for. In his address in the ordinance that has been filed, the city is also increasing the budget for the Metro Health Department to pay for nurses at every school. This is something that we as administration and this board has been advocating for, so we're really thrilled to see that change happen in this upcoming budget cycle. Additionally, Metro government has set aside approximately $30 million towards fund balance restoration and sustainability that are required to meet the fund balance policies that the city has. So even with the great news on this important investment, we still have a lot of work to do, as Dr. Battle referenced, and difficult decisions that need to be made in order to ensure that we do have the continuity of services for our operating budget that we have identified, the priority to move ESSER bridge investments to our operating fund, the important investments on competitive employee compensation, and also to meet the priority around the school safety. In terms of timelines, what comes next is that on May 22nd, we will be joining the Metro Council board hearing to have that discussion. And later in June is when we would expect for Metro City Council to finally approve their budget, to then for us to come back to you and present a final budget for your consideration and approval. And that is what I had to share as an update for today. So if there are any questions, I will take those now.
Thank you, Dr. Battle and Chief Robles, for your update. I'm going to open the floor to any questions. All right, so Board Member Young.
What are we going to present on May 22nd to the Council's Budget Committee?
Right now, they will definitely see the presentation that the board has already received and approved in our last budget cycle. And then I'm going to work closely with Budget and Finance Chair, Dr. Berthina McKinney, on engagement with board members between now and then with any updates if we get to a place where we have an actual proposed budget. So whatever council sees, this board will see in advance of that budget and committee meeting.
Okay, I guess it just seems odd to me for us to go before the council to ask for approval of a budget that we've not approved. Mm-hmm. I guess I don't know. This just, I really struggle with that because part of when it goes to council is we want to make sure that we can advocate and our partners can advocate for, maybe specific dollar amounts for specific things that we want to make, or maybe there's things that are important to council, but I don't know what we're doing here.
So Board Member Young, let me interject here. The meeting that we have on the 22nd is not to ask council for approval. It's just a presentation that we are doing to answer any questions. Our final approval for our budget is in June, and then that is the budget that we present to council to ask them to approve.
Respectfully, Madam Chair, I'm well aware of how it works over there. And I guess I would want to make sure that we feel well versed in what it is, our budget is, before we go and ask our funding body for what is to be, I'm assuming 1.3, 1.4. I don't even know our top line number. And so it's hard
I've
for me
shared that
to
number.
advocate for that if I don't know what I'm advocating for. I'm kind of at a loss. I'm
Huh? Okay, thank you. Board Member Fain.
In regards to the sorry. In regards to programming with the ESSER funds that we're gonna add into the budget, have we made a decision on what exact programming that is, or are we waiting to see what our final budget is before we decide what those programs will look like?
So we've already put together the previous board presentation that include the board-approved strategies for this upcoming budget. It included all of our ESSER Bridge investments. We laid those out, so there's no confusion about what's in there. That included one of the things we talked about were the nurses in every schools. It included our advocacy centers. It included our scholars portfolio. It included community achieves. So all of those key strategies have remained consistent. We're at a point right now where, given the investment we have, which is 13%, $138 million, which I've communicated previously, of determining, because that doesn't cover everything, right? Given
Right.
those budget priorities, what things we're actually going to cut. So we're doing a deep dive right now around how we can sustain some of our key strategies and priorities within the budget that we have received. These are very difficult decisions because we're not asking for anything new. There's nothing aspirational about our current budget. So everything you've seen is what we're considering right now, what will make the final proposed budget to the board. So that's those same items are the items that are considered as far as the ESSER Bridge are concerned.
Okay, so I know about those, and I didn't see, I guess my question is concerning like our advocacy, like the peace centers and things of that nature. Is that a part of
That's a part of the ESSER Bridge.
Okay,
That's
cool.
correct. So some of, the majority of the advocacy centers, the majority of them are already in our operating budget. We received an investment a year ago to move those from ESSER over to operational. We have a few more advocacy centers and our restorative practice assistants, to be specific of what exists at the secondary level, that are not in our operating budget, that we need to move from ESSER into operating. And if you remember that number correctly, it's somewhere between $66 and $76 million, right? So when you just think about that portion of the 13% being leveraged, that doesn't leave a lot for the continuity of our operations, strategic investment, and implementation of our safety and security measures.
Thank you, Dr. Battle. I was asking specifically about that because parents as well as community partners are invested in that because they've seen the positive outcome, of course, of the restorative practice and the Peace Center advocacy. So I just wanted to make sure that we were taking it with us.
Absolutely. And our goal, we're trying to do our very best of capturing as many of those key investments in the final budget. But this is not a perfect fit. So we're trying to think about how we can optimize what we have and still maintain those key programs and services across all of our schools. And these are very difficult decisions that we have to make. We've made some adjustments in the past with regards to, as one example, our Promising Scholars. We've reduced previously the number of Promising Scholar sites we have. This is feedback we've received from our families that they really appreciate having the Promising Scholars experience for their scholars, and we know the benefits that we're also seeing in avoiding some of the summer slide with our students. But we're at a point now where are we going to have to reduce more sites as we move forward as well? So nothing outside of what's already been proposed is going to be in this budget. Now we're just trying to make it all fit given the investment we received.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Battle.
Board Member Block.
So I think I'm like a little bit, I'm probably a little confused in the same manner as Board Member Young, but I think just from like, I understand like mostly, like, okay, we have these general things that we're asking for. I'm struggling a little bit with like the overall number idea to try and get my head around what is and what isn't. Because if we're talking about difficult decisions, I think it's just a matter of like trying to narrow that to what kinds of decisions you all are working with and then what that means for us. So on February 25th, the presentation had 1.25 billion in terms of this current year's operating budget. And then the Esser Bridge, 77 million. And then within this presentation, I see that, and you mentioned, Dr. Battle, that the 13% increase is like around $130 million. And then we have a 10% or a $10 million decrease in TISA. I think I'm just trying to capture, like, is there an overall amount that we know that we either increasing or decreasing by? What I think I'm capturing is that there's an overall increase in the amount of dollars we will have. However, because of inflation and various other things, that means we have sort of a decrease in what we might be able to do over what we thought we wanted to be able to do. Am I capturing that correctly? And is there a succinct way to say it?
Yeah, that's correct. I think we're also we're also having to work through the investment from our operating budget, which is different, but plays a role into how we're funded by the state, right? So when you're thinking about the fiscal capacity, again, we just learned of what the fiscal capacity number was, which is going to be approximately $10 million decrease. We also are having to contemplate the new law where we're not going to serve as the pass-through for the LEA, so we're having to subtract that from our overall budget. There are lots of moving pieces right now that have not been a part of the formula in the past, and we're working on a short amount of time trying to put all the pieces of the puzzle together. So that's why you're feeling that way. That's why we're feeling that way right now.
Can I try an analogy and see if this makes sense? Okay, so like if my family budget is round numbers, $50,000, and then I get a new job, and now my family budget is $56,000, but also my tax rate just went up for some reason, and so that's impacting like the amount of money. So actually, I'm getting $56,000, which is more than $50,000, but the functional tax rate has gone up, and therefore actually my income is really lower for whatever set of reasons. It's like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and then if that 56,000 is made up of two different jobs you're working to equate to 56,000, and one of them is doing something a little bit different than other, like just add that into that scenario. That's
and so that I think I broadly get that, and yet I do understand also then the sort of like general sense of discomfort of like, okay, at what point do we see something that says, okay, we actually, now we know we have this amount of money overall. We know we have these obligations and we're going to make these kinds of changes. We'll go to, and where does going to the council sort of fit into that? Does that all make sense as like a question?
It does, but what I can confirm is as far as the mayor's ordinance is concerned, it's a $138 million investment. Well, proposal, because council still has to do 135 million. We know that. we've got some other moving pieces from our state funding, given some new laws, given the fiscal capacity. But when you think about our overall budget amount, right, all those numbers come together.
Yeah.
So it is complex and complicated, and I will tell you the hours we have spent trying to get to the proposed budget today. It is. There's a lot of tension there, and making all the right informed decisions around where we're going to. And I just want to be real, where we're going to cut in order to make the budget work.
Yeah. And I think the question is just, so at what point would we be able to see something? The question I have, which is I think probably similar to the question that Board Member Young was asking, it's like, at what point will we see like 50, now 56 tax rate is, and then therefore what we're going to spend our money on? At what point does that's the June conversation?
So you'll approve a final budget after the council has considered their budget.
Okay.
It is our goal to bring a draft, a proposed budget back to you
Yeah.
well in advance of that date. We typically try to hit that mark before the council meeting, but because
Yeah.
of the way, I mean, like, think about it, graduations are this week.
Right,
So like,
yeah,
things are just kind of flowing a little earlier than normal with regards to amount of time we got the number to when the board meeting actually happened. So our goal was to try to get to that point today.
Right.
But we didn't have enough time to actually get there. But you will see it well in advance of an approved budget in June. We'll get that to you as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So that you will have that to discuss, to contemplate, and then ultimately approve.
And so sometime in the next several weeks, we'll see some version of what I just
Absolutely.
laid out. Okay.
Absolutely.
And
But
that'll
the
have,
approved budget doesn't
Yeah.
happen until late June, 1st of July.
and that'll have, we're considering cutting this for this purpose, and we're actually seeing increases here for these reasons and all that kind of
Absolutely.
stuff. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Block. Board Member Tyler.
Yes. So my first question has already been asked about what's the plan for what's going to be presented on May 22nd to City Council. I had a follow-up with that said, do we need to plan for a special called meeting before then? Or is that something you're just going to want to
So
do
the-
one-on-one?
So I'll be working closely with Board Member Nabal McKinney. I'm sorry, why am I doing that today? Nabal McKinney on what the plan is, if that's a special call meeting, if that's one, whatever we need, we will make it happen.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to have these kinds of discussions before the council meeting so that we're not kind of on our heels as far as how we decide. And I understand that you're working with what you got. But at the same time, this is one of the very few things that we actually have some influence and control over as a board. And setting the budget is one of our prescribed duties. And so making difficult decisions like that, we would like to share that burden with you.
So let's do it.
Yeah.
What we're communicating today is all the updated information we have received and what we're factoring in to this proposed budget we're going to bring back to the board. So we will accommodate that however we see fit. So that the board has that opportunity. We also all know that the date has moved around a little bit with regards to the council meeting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, a little bit
like
more
all
time.
of those things play into where we are today so that we could give you our best thinking. What we're not going to do is bring you a proposed budget when we've not put forth our best thinking in order for the budget to work and advance the goals of this district. That would not be responsible of us to do, and so that's why we're not doing that today, but that we will do at a time and on a day that is most convenient to our board members, so you have the time to have the discussions that are most needed around one of your largest responsibilities, most critical responsibility, which is to approve a budget.
Yeah. I just don't want us to miss the opportunity to ask for something specific because they didn't know to include it.
Bingo.
And so we have to be at a point where we know what we're asking for, so we know if we need to be mounting some sort of campaign to our council members and asking our constituents to back us up on that and before they vote on it, because otherwise we're stuck with what they give us and we're just going to have to make do. And that to me feels like I said, we kind of be on our heels, and I don't want to. I understand that we are under a lot of pressure, and I understand that we have not been given every piece of the puzzle in a timely manner from multiple areas. And that is not your fault, and that is not Chief Robles' fault. That is just a condition of what we're dealing with. However, I do think it is extremely important, and it behooves us to do our job properly, to know what we're asking for before the meeting happens.
Absolutely. And so we're doing our part to equip you with that information so that you have it to advocate for. And we're not at that point yet to be able to do that. So we will be getting that information back to this board for you to consider. It was impossible to have all of that determined before today. And I'm just going to be transparent and frank about it. It was impossible, although we have spent almost every hour that was at our disposal to try to get to this point today. But we will get that to the board for you to consider, for you to know which things are not quite fitting into the budget we have. But we also have a responsibility to try to optimize what we do have to the best of our ability in the event there's no adjustment on the back end.
Yeah.
Board members, I also want to interject and say, I've been in discussion with Dr. Battle related to the budget. Questions came earlier, touched base with her, even while on a field trip. And we just got information at the last minute that threw us in a upheaval. And these are last minute things that we have never had to deal with before. One of those being how the state's new law related to their removal of funds prior to us getting it. Usually we are a pass-through, and so we can calculate that. We don't know what that looks like and what it will be calculated. On top of the new law related to vouchers, we don't know what the capacity of that will be. So we have a lot of unknowns, and so I'm going to ask that I'll continue to work with Dr. Battle to get this information out, but we also have to give grace under the circumstances that we just did not have the information for our team to make a timely decision and determination of where we are today. I hear your concerns related to us having it prior to the Metro Council meeting, but we also have to allow our team to do their job, and they have been working diligently to do so. They were just unable to present a budget today at this board meeting, and we were aware of that, and you were notified about that prior to this meeting. And so
Because we
I
asked
just,
for it and we're told we didn't get it. Yeah, that's why we were notified before.
what do you mean?
Because we asked for the line item and we were told, oh, we're not going to get it. And then that's when things changed. I think we also, I don't want to be seen as being obtuse or confrontational, because that's not my intent. But our job is to go over the budget. And so if I didn't ask these questions, and I'm not saying this to try to not give grace. I just need to make sure that I'm able to say it in a public forum so that it's on the record that we had these questions and they were addressed publicly. It's not to be confrontational. It is to do my job as a board member.
Can I?
Hold on. I'm going to stop there and say, I hear your concerns. We are working to address those concerns. We will work to get that information prior to the time so that you can advocate in an appropriate manner. And we will go from there. So I'm going to take it to Board Member Taylor.
I have one more question that's not about that. That's something
Okay.
else. So you had mentioned that there will be a $10 million reduction because of TISA. And I don't know, I guess I need to ask you, and then you can kick it to him if you need to. But also TISA's base is increasing by 3%. Is that 10 million less than last year, including the 3% increase on the base? Or is how does that work?
So TISA by way of our fiscal capacity.
Yeah, so
Which is the
yeah.
overall, so I'll let Chief Robles explain that, and then.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Board Member Taylor, great question. So yeah, that estimate is based on the new per pupil funding. So the fiscal capacity, what it does is, like if you go through all of the formula, then that multiplier essentially after the amounts per pupil and all the unique learning needs are calculated over that amount, and that factor essentially says, well, this is how much is, the local government is responsible for, how much the state. So when that factor increases, then it shrinks essentially what we're getting from the state.
Okay. I just didn't know, since their base was increasing, if just straight number-wise,
Yeah.
it might be a little bit closer than we had hoped, but thank you for explaining that. Appreciate it. All right, those are my questions.
Thank you. Board Member Taylor?
I didn't know, Dr. Bell, did you have something else you were going to say? I didn't.
No, I was just going to address timeline. I mean, the
Okay.
goal initially was to bring a draft budget here today. At the first point of us realizing that we were not going to get to that, we communicated with everyone around our agenda for today's meeting. That was all. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. My question, I did have the same question about the TISA funding. And so thank you for that answer. My next question is in regards to the line on, I guess, slide 4, where it talks about MNPS will receive a 13% increase. That's just an increase from the metro portion of our budget. Is that correct, or is that the overall increase?
That is the, when you compare, that's an increase over last year's total allocation that is on the mayor's ordinance from fiscal year 25. In that total amount that is in the ordinance, there is a estimated amount that is what we will receive from the state. So it is essentially an increase over the overall amount that includes essentially the portion that we will receive from revenue from the state.
Okay, all right. And then the second question I have is just in regards to COLA and what that looks like as far as our responsibility to match with the city requests for their employees as well.
So I'm going to address one portion of this, and I'll kick it to Jorge. That is also one of the things we are working through. You all, in just a few minutes, are going to discuss the resolution as well. And so we're just trying to think about, for all of our staff, how do we leverage the funds that we have at our disposal to be most strategic to support and really uplift the value of every employee that serves in MNPS. So that's one thing. So we got another moving piece. I'm going to enter into this conversation, which the board will take up momentarily and at the board meeting later. But also, Jorge, do you want to talk about what we think may be happening at the metro government level?
Yes, Member Taylor, what we understand what's considered into the budget, even though I'm not seeing explicit language around it, is two components to compensation adjustment on for city metro employees on non-MNPS. One is the result of their new pay plan that was introduced that factors in a change on the number of steps, equivalent of steps, and a change on the midpoint. Which is estimated at about a 2% increase is the result of that, which would be sort of the equivalent of our step increases, plus a 1% across the board, which is equivalent of a COLA. That's my understanding is what's considered in the current ordinance of the mayor for non-MNPS employees.
So I guess the follow-up question to that is, what is our responsibility as far as efforts to match what the city is doing for the metro employee, our MNPS employees?
There is not a requirement there. We have historically, with the exception of one budget cycle, walked hand in hand as far as what we were doing around compensation and COLA, particularly for metro government employees and our employees. I have had enough conversations with board members to understand the strategic compensation is a priority of ours. Again, we're trying to make a lot of things work right here, given what we have learned from metro government, but also it being one of our 4 priorities as a district. So we've tried to match. There's nothing that says we can't exceed. We would like to do that if the funds allow us to, if we have the time to work towards a budget that allows us to do that.
Thank you.
Board Member Elrod?
Thank you so much. I guess my first request is when we have our meeting before we meet with the council to go over the possible take-home pay from the analogy we got. I know within that, we're going to have hopefully some type of infographic, some type of something.
A one-pager like we've had in the past?
Yes, thank you. Of here's what we're trying to get done, what that means we are not able to do. But I also request that within that, we have some specifics. Historically, sometimes we talk broadly about school-based budgeting and particularly those individual school initiatives and how they choose to spend their own money, because that's how we are organized through school-based budgeting. However, within our council members, that is commonly a discussion that they have from within their own constituent base or from talking to individual principals or what have you, and they will have individual concerns. For example, I am already hearing about supposedly some cuts to individual music programmings. So I know that those are sometimes a concern. So when we have those discussions and we have that just in preparation of whatever that meeting might be, whether that is true or not, if we can have some specifics of what are the larger school-based budget things that we might be losing, that would be helpful so that we can combat that in our advocacy pre and post and during that council meeting.
So to your point, once we bring it back, you'll get everything as you've received in the past. We'll include the one pager like we've done in the past. To be explicit, we kind of laid that out via our PowerPoint presentation already, so that's simple to do. What we will not have, though, given the SBB conversation, because school communities and teams actually make those decisions based upon meeting the unique needs of the students who are there. There's lots of factors that go into that. That doesn't always equate to the decisions we're making for our district-wide budget. So just setting expectation, it won't be that granular because school teams actually make those respective decisions. What you will hear is if there are district strategies that we're leveraging, particularly those that show up in some form or fashion across every school, nurses, safety ambassadors, community chiefs, things of that nature, you will hear specifics around that because those are being funded at the district level as opposed to the student-based budgeting level.
I understand that we don't get to decide unless we are on that team, the community team that makes those decisions for school-based. But I know that there are some concerned constituents based upon those conversations. And I think that's because for the most part, for the past several years, luckily, we have not had a difficult budget season. And so it's kind of a first for not just a lot of our constituents, but it's also a first for, frankly, this board. I think maybe besides myself, maybe Frida. And so it is difficult to make these harder decisions, and it requires an over communication. And so on that, I also request that we just have more board discussions as much as we can, of course, within the purview of sunshine laws. But I know that this was communicated. I read my director's reports. We, of course, have our agendas. But there is a requirement on us as a board and also from board leadership of making sure that we are aware of some of the larger things and what the expectations are or are not. Because I knew that we were not going to get some of this information that we were desiring to have because I had read about it. But there still needs to be more touch.
So the only thing I'm clarifying here is those might not always be budget decisions.
Correct.
Right? They might be based on the unique needs and talents demand from the school level. And so we don't want to confuse those two conversations. So I hear what you're saying, but they might not always be budget related, if that makes sense. You might be able to offer strings. And because of the demand, you might not offer band because of demand. It might not be, it's not always budget related. You might offer French because you have a certificated teacher versus Spanish where you don't have a certificated teacher. So it's not necessarily always driven by budget. And so I'm just calling out that we will always have those conversations. We actually did have that conversation with the respective leader of that district. Grounded in, of course, our priorities as a district. So when it comes to our ESSER Bridge conversation, our continuity of operations, our strategic investments, our safety and security measures, all those things we have and will continue to bring before the board so that you're informed about the things that we were doing that we might not be able to do anymore, or where you might see some kind of molding the program in a way that will match the investment needed.
Yeah, I think it's just important that there's going to be more touch from our constituent base. There's going to be more touch from our principals, from our own communities, and then of course from the council, and then from us to the council, because we're going to be asking for more than we've usually asked. And so that'll require more touch to us as well.
Yes, ma'am. And if I can, is it okay if I say one other thing? Because the forecast for the budget investment is very positive, right? Like we've actually not received this level of investment in any years past. So I don't want us to get confused by that. What makes this one difficult are all the moving pieces that are all happening at the same time, including that our original budget did not include anything new or aspirational. So we were budgeting towards continuing to leverage key programs and priority areas from years past. So this is what makes this one a little more difficult, but the investment that came by way of the mayor is very significant to our organization in being able to do that. We might be the first and only district who's been able to maintain key strategies that will leverage during ESSER, and that is to be celebrated in so many different ways, including the fact that we've moved a few things in years past. So I just want to make sure that while we are trying to move as quickly as possible into the budget documents and the discussions needed, that the fact that we can even have this discussion around what we're continuing is very positive and is a strong indication around the support we have through the mayor's office. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Board Member Player.
I just want to give some context as a former budget chair. When I became budget chair 2020, we changed the process of how we do the budgeting aspect. And I understand the need and the concern for the members to see a line item budget. And that will be given in time. When we have traditionally done this process, we have done the budget proposal, budget oversight. When we have gone to the council, we usually have given the continuity of, I would say maintenance, but continuity of operations. I always get the maintenance of effort and continuity of operation, overview, budget allocations as part of the council, and saying, this is what we have done, this is what we have accomplished, this is the foundation to understanding our budget, these are what we're doing, and these are what goals are we trying to achieve. That's what we usually do at the budget hearing in front of council. We have not always given them a line item budget at that time, because a lot of times we're still finalizing from the state. Previous budgets, I know one year we had an $8 million deficit that we did not get from the state that we were expecting. And then last minute, they were saying, oh, we're not going to get that $8 million allocation. So we had to adjust. And so usually by the first week of June is when we do our true advocacy to the council about what exactly we need, because by that time, the end of May, ideally in a perfect world, we want it before then, we have gotten the final numbers from the state, and we know what the true picture looks like of our allocations to make sure this is what we're advocating for, this is what we need, this is what we got from the state, this is what we didn't receive from the state, this is the changes and amendments that the state has. So it's a frustrating position to be in, from particularly while we're waiting for the finalization of the state, because the state's not efficient as we need, given where we are, especially at the end of the fiscal year and preparing into the current fiscal year. But there will be time at the end of May, especially during the first week of June, where we'll be able to advocate for what we need and exactly what that looks like. But the budget hearing is really more to set a foundation of, this is what we did last year with the current budget, this is where we're going, this is what we're continuing, this is what not we're continuing, and this is how we're looking forward to the coming year. So it's really just an information level setting aspect of the process. So I just want to just make sure we just clarify, what does the process look like? What is it? Well, but we'll still have those conversations. We'll still have plenty of time to have a line item budget, have several meetings to talk about what that looks like and how to make the decisions we need to make as a board to present a proper budget and make decisions that we need for the budget. So I just want to give that historical context.
And with that historical context, we are kind of in alignment right now with where we are with the information that we have, that we usually present, that we typically present over the last 3-4 years to, prior to the council meeting?
I've got them in my bag in the last several years. We haven't approved them, but we've had them to look at.
You have the line items to look at.
Yes.
Started
Yes.
but we've not approved
Yes. Yes, agreed. But we've had that at our disposal earlier.
Right. Gotcha. All right, so what we will do is, I will continue to work with Dr. Battle to see, for us to continue working on that budget, so that we can get the necessary items that you are needing to be able to advocate properly for this budget. Should we have a special called meeting, that meeting has to be notified within 48 hours prior to that meeting. So please keep in mind, I will continue to communicate with you all as it relates to that. We will try to host one prior to the 22nd, yeah. Prior to the 22nd, but keep in mind, we will also be working in between graduations, so please be flexible during those times to be able to schedule and attend this specially called meeting. Again, a 48-hour notice has to be done, and I'm asking board members to have flexibility in that time because we will be working within graduation times to make this work for all board members. All right? Do we have any other questions or comments? Thank you. All right, we will, thank you, Chief Robles and Dr. Battle. We will conclude our Budget Finance Committee hearing. Announcements?